After 50, many men live with an uncomfortable contradiction. The desire is still there, but the penis doesn't respond with the same speed or firmness. The first reaction is usually to look for stimulation, but in clinical practice, what fails most at this stage isn't sexual interest. It's the path the blood must travel to reach where it needs to go. I'm Dr. David Miller, a urologist, and there's something curious I've noticed over the years. Men who changed nothing in the bedroom but changed small daily habits began reporting a different sensation in the body. Less vascular stiffness, more consistency in response, fewer negative surprises. It wasn't dramatic, it was coherent. After 50, the male body enters a subtle but persistent inflammatory state. Blood vessels lose elasticity, the endothelium responds less efficiently, and nitric oxide, the chemical signal that tells arteries to open, becomes less protected. The result shows up in the penis. Blood arrives, but it doesn't arrive the right way. The erection may start, but it doesn't hold like it used to. Some daily habits directly influence this inflammatory scenario. They don't stimulate the penis, they change the internal environment where sexual response happens. When inflammation decreases and the vessel wall becomes more responsive again, the body responds with more predictability. Not by force, by basic physiology working better. That's why certain reports stand out. They don't talk about instant arousal, but about a sense of livelier circulation, a response less dependent on mental effort and more stable firmness over time. This isn't a sexual trick. It's the vascular system stopping its fight against the body itself. The common mistake is thinking penile response depends only on the intimate moment. In reality, it's built throughout the day through choices that affect inflammation, vessel elasticity, and blood quality. When those variables improve, the penis simply follows. Today, you're going to understand what really happens in the male body when certain habits become part of the routine after 50, why some men feel a difference and others don't, and where many people misinterpret what's happening. Before we continue, check if you're already subscribed to the channel. And now comment with just one word. Write inflammation if you think the problem is internal wear and tear, or write circulation if you feel the failure happens along the blood's path to the penis. To understand why penile response changes so much after 50, you have to face a reality few men are told clearly. The body ages from the inside out, and the vascular system is one of the first to feel the impact. It's not sudden. It's a slow, silent, cumulative process. Over the years, blood vessels lose elasticity. The arterial wall becomes stiffer, less able to expand quickly. This happens throughout the body, but the penis suffers earlier because it depends on small, sensitive arteries that must respond fast. Any loss of flexibility there becomes erectile difficulty. Another central factor is the endothelium, the inner lining of the vessels. It releases nitric oxide, the molecule that tells arteries it's time to relax and allow blood in. After 50, that endothelium is often inflamed from years of poor diet, stress, little sleep, and inactivity. Inflammation reduces nitric oxide. Without enough nitric oxide, the penis doesn't receive the proper chemical signal to fill. At the same time, blood circulates less efficiently. It becomes thicker, especially in men with insulin resistance or excess abdominal fat. That reduces flow speed and pressure. The result is classic. The erection starts but doesn't last, or it takes constant stimulation to maintain. That's why so many men feel frustrated even with desire intact. The problem isn't in the mind and not necessarily in hormones. It's in the physical route blood must take to reach the penis. When that route meets resistance, the body responds with intermittent failures. This explains why quick fixes rarely work long-term after 50. Stimulation without circulation doesn't solve it. Mental effort without healthy vessels can't sustain it. The foundation of mature penile response is flexible vessels, fluid blood, and controlled inflammation. When a man understands this, something changes. He stops blaming himself and starts observing his body more strategically. The question stops being, "What's wrong with me?" and becomes, "What is interfering with my circulation?" If this is making sense to you, like the video now. It helps the channel keep sharing clear, direct, physiology-based information for men who want to understand, not just try, how to regain a more stable response after 50. When we talk about olive oil in the context of male health after 50, it's important to take it out of the generic category of healthy fat and place it where it truly belongs, as a vascular and inflammatory modulator. The impact of daily use isn't to stimulate the penis directly, but to change the internal environment that determines whether blood will flow well or not. Extra virgin olive oil is rich in monounsaturated fats and phenolic compounds that act exactly where aging most harms erections. The endothelium. These compounds help reduce low-grade chronic inflammation, the silent inflammation that doesn't hurt but gradually hardens vessels over the years. When that inflammation decreases, the endothelium can function more efficiently again. That has a direct consequence: better production and preservation of nitric oxide. For many mature men, the problem isn't only producing too little nitric oxide, but losing it too quickly due to oxidative stress. Olive oil acts as a partial shield against that chemical destruction, allowing the vasodilation signal to reach penile vessels with more strength. Another rarely discussed point is olive oil's effect on blood fluidity. Diets low in good fats and high in refined oils can make blood denser, slower, heavier. Daily extra virgin olive oil, used in appropriate amounts, can improve lipid profile and reduce that internal friction. More fluid blood means more pressure available when an erection is needed. Over time, the body starts responding differently to stimulation. Not because anything is forced, but because the pathway becomes less blocked. Many men describe this phase as a more natural response, less dependent on effort, less unstable. It's essential to understand: olive oil doesn't create erections out of nowhere. It removes obstacles. It doesn't work like a switch, but as ongoing maintenance of the vascular system. And aging systems respond better to consistency than to shocks. That's the shift in logic. Instead of trying to wake up the penis by force, you start preparing the ground where erections happen every day. When the ground improves, the response becomes less unpredictable. And for many men over 50, that's the difference between constant tension and growing confidence. There's a common mistake men over 50 make when they start using olive oil thinking about sexual health. They ignore the how, and that changes the outcome completely. Olive oil doesn't work the same way when it's used randomly at any time, mixed with habits that sabotage circulation. The mature male body responds far more to metabolic context than to an isolated ingredient. When olive oil is consumed alongside heavy meals high in sugar, refined flour, or ultra-processed foods, part of its potential is neutralized. The glucose spike that follows creates inflammation, raises insulin, and temporarily reduces nitric oxide availability. In other words, the same olive oil that could help the vessel relax ends up inside an environment that pushes the vessel to contract. Another critical point is excessive heat. When olive oil is repeatedly exposed to high temperatures, it loses part of the phenolic compounds responsible for protecting the endothelium. What remains is still fat, but not the same functional fat. In practical terms, the body receives calories, but not the vascular signal that can support erectile response. The time of day also matters. After 50, the body tends to respond better to strategies that reduce metabolic noise, not increase it. Using olive oil as a finishing touch on lighter meals or as part of a predictable routine creates a scenario where inflammation gradually drops and the vascular system shifts into cooperation. There's also a subtle factor: the indirect impact on the nervous system. Inflammatory diets keep the body in a chemically alert state. When used well, olive oil can help soften that state, supporting an internal environment more compatible with sexual response. Erections require open vessels, but they also require a nervous system that isn't stuck in threat mode. Men who use olive oil strategically often report something that doesn't appear immediately as stronger erections, but comes before it: lighter digestion, less heaviness, more stable energy, and less fragmented sleep. These signs matter because they show the body is leaving constant defense mode. And when the body leaves defense mode, it invests again in functions it had pushed into the background. Sexual response is one of them, not because of external stimulation, but because the organism finally has an internal environment that allows blood to enter stay, and sustain rigidity without excessive effort. That's the detail that separates men who test olive oil from men who actually notice change. It's not the product alone, it's the system it's placed inside. There's something that must be said with medical honesty. Olive oil is not neutral, and using it daily without criteria can produce the opposite effect in some men over 50. Not because olive oil is bad, but because the mature organism responds differently to excess, wrong combinations, and unrealistic expectations. The first risk is quantity. Many men confuse good fat with unlimited fat. After 50, lipid metabolism slows down. Excess daily olive oil can contribute to abdominal fat gain, especially when carbohydrate intake isn't controlled. And visceral fat isn't just aesthetic. It increases systemic inflammation, raises the conversion of testosterone to estrogen, and worsens vascular response. The result can be the exact opposite of what was intended. Another rarely discussed point is interaction with medications. Men using blood pressure meds, cholesterol drugs, or blood thinners can respond differently. Olive oil can improve blood fluidity and endothelial function, but in excess combined with certain drugs, it can contribute to lower blood pressure, dizziness, or weakness. It's not common, but it's real, and often blamed on age instead of the combination. There's also the digestive factor. With aging, bile and digestive enzyme production can decrease. In some men, daily olive oil at the wrong times causes reflux, abdominal discomfort, or nighttime heaviness. When that happens, sleep becomes fragmented, and poor sleep directly sabotages hormone production and nighttime vascular recovery, affecting erections the next day. Another silent mistake is expecting an immediate, isolated effect. Olive oil is not a sexual stimulant, it's a terrain modulator. When a man obsessively monitors penile response after a few days, he creates performance anxiety. That anxiety activates the sympathetic nervous system, constricts vessels, and neutralizes any vascular gain olive oil might provide. The body enters test mode, not response mode. Finally, there's false security. Using olive oil daily while keeping everything else the same. High sugar, inactivity, nightly alcohol, and chronic stress erase much of the benefit. Olive oil doesn't compensate for a hostile metabolic environment. It amplifies a body that is already at least somewhat cooperative. Men who truly benefit understand olive oil is part of a machine, not the entire engine. Used with criteria, it supports circulation. Used without strategy, it becomes just another calorie, and in some cases, another source of quiet frustration. There's one detail that separates men who notice consistent improvement from those who say, "I used it, but I felt nothing." The physiological context in which olive oil is used. The same ingredient can act as a quiet ally or as something almost irrelevant, depending on the body's internal state. After 50, the male vascular system often operates near its limit. Penile arteries are small, sensitive, and require fast response. When the endothelium is inflamed, stiff, or oxidized, it simply doesn't release enough nitric oxide. Without that chemical signal, desire doesn't matter. The vessel won't open the way it should. Olive oil fits right there, but only if the terrain allows. Men who use olive oil daily and get better responses usually share something. They reduced saboteurs first. Less frequent sugar, fewer nighttime glucose spikes, less regular alcohol, more continuous sleep. That creates an environment where olive oil polyphenols can act, protecting the endothelium and reducing oxidative stress. Without that base, the effect is diluted. Another decisive factor is rhythm. The mature male organism reacts poorly to intermittent patterns. Using olive oil 3 days, forgetting 2, overdoing it on weekends, and then blaming the ingredient is a common cycle. The endothelium responds to consistency, not impulses. It's repeated moderate use that begins changing circulation quality over weeks. There's also the influence of nervous system state. Erections don't depend only on available blood, but on neurological permission. Men who live in constant alert, pressure, anxiety, fear of failure, keep adrenaline elevated. Adrenaline constricts vessels. In that scenario, even if olive oil improves biochemistry, the nervous system blocks the response. That's why some men improve energy and general well-being, yet remain frustrated in bed. The body is ready, but the nervous system won't release. And there's a sign almost no one watches, but it tells you olive oil is truly working. Changes outside of sex. Warmer hands and feet, less heavy legs, steadier energy after meals, deeper sleep. Those signs usually come before any penile improvement. When they appear, it's only a matter of time before sexual response catches up. The mistake is staring only at the penis. The right move is observing the whole body. Because when circulation truly improves, it improves first where the body needs it most, and only later where the man wants it most. We've reached the most important part of this conversation because this is where many men finally understand they were never broken. They were simply using the wrong strategy for a body that changed over time. After 50, the male body doesn't respond to aggressive shortcuts. It responds to physiological coherence. When extra virgin olive oil is used daily the right way, what happens isn't a miracle instant effect. What happens is deeper and more valuable. The body begins leaving defense mode and returning to function mode. Inflammation drops, the endothelium regains some responsiveness, nitric oxide stops being destroyed so quickly, and circulation flows with less resistance. The erection shows up as a consequence, not a forced objective. Men who understand this stop policing their own performance. They stop measuring every stimulus, every second, every reaction. And that's silent but decisive. When the mind relaxes, the vessel opens. The penis doesn't respond well to pressure. It responds to permission. When the body senses a more stable internal environment, it delivers firmness with far less effort. Another detail few men notice is that real improvement doesn't come in spikes. It comes in predictability. More reliable erections, less loss in the middle of sex, less anticipatory anxiety, more presence and touch. That changes not only sex, but a man's posture in life. He initiates again, he gets closer again, he feels whole again. And that's not just pleasure, it's identity, confidence, and emotional calm. Olive oil in this context isn't a kitchen trick. It's a symbol of something bigger. The decision to treat the body as a system, not as an isolated problem. When a man makes that shift, he stops fighting age and starts working with the real biology that is still there, still functioning. If this video brought you clarity and helped you see male sexual health in a smarter, more realistic way, subscribe to the channel, because here you'll find direct medical content without empty promises. Like this video so this information reaches other men going through this in silence. And watch other videos on the channel where I go deeper into practical strategies to recover circulation, confidence, and performance over the years. I'll leave it here. Take care of your body with awareness, respect the signals it gives you, and I'll see you in the next video.